this is the robot that I've been working on lately. Let me show you what all is involved. First of all, the frame is built, well, most of the robot is built from a car stereo, an old car stereo with a cassette player. So the drive is the cassette player part of a car stereo. Here's the motor, and this part I've actually glued something onto, but this was the part that drives the cassette player, or the cassette itself. And the frame is from the body of the car stereo. So it's something similar to this. Let me show you. So here's another one. It's just an old car stereo that has a cassette player, and so an aluminum, I think it's aluminum at least, aluminum body. And inside, when you take it apart, it has all kinds of cool electronics. Let me switch to the zoom here, close up, and you can see, gosh, it's got some ICs. What else does it have? All kinds of goodies, diodes, transistors, and so on. But in addition to the electronics, it also has the motor drive to run the cassette if you want to play music. So what I did was I took apart one of these and I stripped out pretty much everything except for the motor. So let me show you again. So basically this whole body is from another cassette deck car stereo. So there's a Mabuchi motor, 12 volt, 2400 RPMs, and it runs through some pulleys. Now it had some rubber band, or well, rubber belts that it ran on, and I'll show those to you. If I can find them here. Yeah, so let's show. So this was the bigger one. There's one pulley that goes from the small motor to the bigger pulley, or one belt I should say, and another belt. And this is a preliminary replacement belt that I made with I guess I'll talk about that in a little bit, but it's made from silk thread, a kind of a bit of a thick piece of silk thread. Somewhere in here I've got that. Yeah, so this is the thread that I used. I wonder if that will focus at all. This is some stuff I bought when I was in Japan, and I used this thread to, well, it's fairly thick. It's thicker than you would sew with, and it's silk, so it's strong. And I used it for this. Back when I was over there, I was making fly fishing rods. So the rod's in there, but also tubes to hold the fly rod out of bamboo. And you can kind of use fire to darken the places, and then you lacquer it. But this bit here is silk thread wrapped very tightly with special knots, and then it's lacquered. And so it's a really strong thing, and it keeps the bamboo from splitting. But that's what that looks like. Anyway, that's where I had this silk thread from. And what else do we have? Okay, so yeah, I replaced those rubber belts here from this bigger pulley. So the motor itself runs here, and it runs at 2400 RPM, and it has a belt that goes on this pulley. It's about, gosh, I'd say 4 times as big, so it reduces the RPMs by 4 times. And inside, it's difficult to see, but on the inside of this pulley, there's a smaller wheel that runs this wheel, this pulley, and on the other side, this is the one that actually would run the cassette. And I've glued on or epoxied on a little retainer bit and added yet another belt and another pulley here that runs the wheels. And so this thing reduces the RPM from 2400 to about 60 RPM. Oh, and what else do we have? So I put some duct tape on here, and it's got an Arduino bolted on and a shield with a little breadboard plugged into that. There's a 9-volt battery. The motor wire comes up through a hole here and is plugged into the breadboard. And there's a servo motor here, which if I turn it upside down, I can maybe show you. What it does is it turns the wheels, and it's kind of off kilter here. So, and the wheels itself, the whole cassette assembly with the motor is plugged into, or well, jammed into a little PVC pipe for plumbing, which I've epoxied into the metal frame from the stereo. So this is a caster that is jammed in there. It's got a little bit of duct tape to make it a semi-tight fit, and I've crimped it in and bolted it onto the cassette player assembly. And what else do we have? There's some weird duct tape, red, blue, black. The wheels are also interesting. The wheels I've made from, these are pretty big caps for pepper, hot pepper, like banana pepper and pepperoncini. And there are 2 of them glued together, epoxied together on each side. And then I also super glued a rubber band, and let me show you that. This is one of these thick broccoli rubber bands, or well, rubber bands that you get to hold broccoli together, maybe asparagus too, from the grocery store. And it'll kind of expand out to fit those wheels. That gives it a little bit of extra traction. And these wheels are made from vodka cap bottles, actually. And the axle is coat hanger. Now for some of the frame, there's a little bit here, this black part, and a little bit, well, you can't see it very well, down here, black part. What I did was I cut out, I've been tearing apart for past few months, several years, whatever, this old boom box that I had. It kind of stopped working, and so I tore it apart. But it has nice hard plastic, and it has several of these little slots. See if I can get an angle where you can see it. Yeah, right here, for example. If you cut this part out, it makes a nice bit for a coat hanger axle to go through. I actually cut out the headphones section here, and I guess, yeah, that was the part that I used for retaining this, see if I can find it. Yeah, that's the part that went here that keeps this rubber band, extra rubber band belt that I added. keeps it in place on the cassette drive. And I've added some little bits of plastic here on this pulley to keep the rubber band in place, and it should drive the wheels. And what else do we have here? Oh, the belts. Yeah, the belts are interesting. I think I showed you. So the rubber belts that came on the cassette player, well, I guess they were sufficient, but they're kind of old and dried out, so they didn't really have a lot of traction on the pulleys. So what I did was I used that silk thread and made a special knot and added some rubber cement to it to give it some tackiness and stickiness. This is one that was a little bit too large, but yeah, it's just typical Elmer's rubber cement. For the knot, for making these belts, I did this like an old fisherman's knot. So you kind of size out how big it needs to be, and you pull one end taut and measure it out, and then you can use, like, this is going to be much smaller. This is a big piece of cord here, but you can use a pencil to kind of move the knot down toward where you need it to be to get the right size. Let's say if we did something like that, and then you pull each end taut and then pull the two ends together, and you get a nice good knot. And with this smaller thread, it's not too big that it doesn't cause any problems with the pulleys. And you coat it with the rubber cement, makes it nice and tacky. I mean, silk is strong, but it's kind of slick. But when you put rubber cement on it, it will make it tacky and kind of have good grip. Now I should show you the first prototype I was working on. This is a smaller one. Maybe compare for size. This one's made out of actually Stouffer's entrees, like for macaroni and cheese and so on. And it's got the same deal with a caster. This has another Mabuchi motor, but this is a really high RPM one, and it really just didn't have enough torque to move the robot. So I'm going to work with that. Here was a slot where the 9-volt battery went. I've actually moved it over here. Just use the same snap and so on. But this is one of the Chinese clone Unos that I have. And underneath here is a different one, another Chinese clone Uno. So this one is a bit bigger and heavier, but the good part is that the cassette player stripped from the stereo will has enough torque to move the thing. And let me see if I can switch this back to, yeah, maybe the focus is better there for a little bit further distance. But anyway, this one I'm going to get back to. I've ordered some high torque geared motors that I'm going to replace here, and maybe I'll get this guy working too. So yeah, the wheels, like I said, these are made from banana pepper and pepperoncini caps. Got a little marker there with a post-it note to show the revolutions per minute. But anyway, they're glued together with epoxy, and these back two are from Powerade caps. So I made wheels out of Powerade caps, and so it's like just, you know, the Gatorade clone, the Coca-Cola or whatever. So it's a Powerade cap. You get the cap, maybe sand it down a little bit each end, put some epoxy on it. You can, with some of these caps, they have a nice center little nib that you can drill a hole into. With the Powerades, I've noticed that after measuring it out, The exact center is between the E and the R in Powerade. And in fact, the middle horizontal line, so if you poke a hole there and drill your center bit, you could put a coat hanger through it and put a little epoxy on each side, glue it, maybe clamp it a bit, and it will make a wheel. Then you can put your coat hanger or whatever axle you want to use through it, and it's decent. And if you put the rubber band on it, I don't know if I can do this since these aren't glued together, but anyway, roughly a rubber band fits pretty nice. One of these broccoli vegetable rubber bands fits pretty nicely. Yeah, I'm screwing this up, but anyway, I'll show you roughly what it looks like. Fits pretty nicely on there. Then you can put a little dab maybe of super glue, 1, 2, 3, or 1, 2, 3, 4 around the circumference, and it gives it some nice grip. And you could add some rubber cement to give it even more grip and mess up your floors. But anyway, so I'm making wheels out of recycled stuff here. So that's pretty much it. Oh, I guess I should say, and let's switch into the zoom again. I had been using, for the controller, basically the Arduino. I was using a transistor to turn on and off the power, and I was using the 5-volt control voltage from the Arduino to switch on and switch off the 9-volt power to the motor itself. But I've switched over to this, gosh, what is it, a 754410 half H bridge motor controller chip, and it will allow you more easily to control forward motion of the motor and backward motion with just a couple of pins. Well, 3 pins actually for the Arduino. Yeah, that's what I've got going on so far. So there's not a whole lot. And it's actually, to be honest, it's not a robot yet. It just kind of moves. And I'm hoping to add, let's switch back out to the longer range focus. I'm hoping to add an IR sensor and use an IR keypad that came with my Arduino kit to control it. So go forward, turn right, turn left, and so on. And eventually I want to have some artificial intelligence, so that, and maybe even like a little sonar thing that I might mount on this PVC tube here, so that it can detect where it's, when it's going to hit an obstacle and so on. But yeah, that's what I've got going on so far.